Are we the last generation that knows how to speak to strangers?
We met one of the financial controllers at Love Honey.
And you made good use of that discount ever since, right? So it's, in hindsight, we held that look at each other for a bit too long.
You do it smoking a fag, you look like a fucking philosopher.
He's nailed it immediately.
Are we addicted to upgrades and updates that really change nothing?
Do I believe in chemtrails or the incompetence of the Canadian government? Really, that's what we're discussing here.
So you're trying to blame Canada?
Always blame Canada. I think I need a pint. That did not go to plan. Good evening, everyone, on this wonderful Friday night. I'd love to welcome everyone back to our second episode. Never knew we'd get past the first one, but we have actually managed it. So this is immediately straight into the difficult second album. You'll see we've made some brutal cuts. Ponty and Simon, our international correspondents, have not made the show, not for any reason that we don't like them, just because of clashing diary engagements. And you'll see as this podcast go on, we will start to introduce more of our friendship group based on who's probably the funniest going in first and then working backwards. So you can decide in the long run who we really think is amusing or not. So this evening we've got Shamit Dutta 4 this time. Looking forward to Shamit Dutta the 5th, maybe at some point in this podcast. Your technology is all working and ready and present?
Yeah, hopefully I'll be less disruptive this week.
Excellent guarantee. AJ?
Hello.
Hello. New microphoned up as well. Ready to go?
Yeah, I feel very professional. It's glowing red. I can change it to a fetching pink if that helps.
No, I think it's lovely. And John's just arrived on a red eye and has brought a rather fetching teenage girl's hat. So,
Thanks very much. It's very kind of you to say so.
It's a beautiful purple. We actually got some feedback that we're not going to introduce each other, but what we probably should do is introduce the idea behind this podcast a little bit. And so we didn't do that last time around, but I'm going to make an attempt before we start talking. So the idea for Last of the Line came out of two things, but it came out of one thing more seriously. So a very good family member of mine very sadly got terminal cancer. And he was around for quite a while and he did lots of things on his bucket list. And I had a conversation with him in the hospice, which was that he said he'd done a lot of things he wanted to do before he died, but he was really sad that his kids would never hear him talk as an adult. And I sort of said to him, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, obviously they're talking to me now, and they're 10 and 12." He says, "We talk now," but he says they're never going to hear me. I'm not going to make it to when they're 18. So he's like, I can leave them messages and voicemail messages and things that they can listen to when they're 18. But we're not going to have a chat down the pub. We're never going to have a grown-up chat. And he was really sad about that. And I didn't really think much about it at the time. And I said, no, I get that. And then very sadly, when he died, again, I didn't think that much about it until us as a group sort of started talking a bit more morbidly about parents dying and us as we age, worrying about it. And we came up with this idea that maybe what would be a really lovely thing to do for our kids would be to have a conversation and find a way of recording that. And that has snowballed into this podcast. And we'll talk more about that as time goes on and maybe some of those conversations that we had that we got to this point. But what we're really trying to do, we're not trying to impress anyone. We're just having conversations that we think would be really lovely for our kids when they're older, maybe to sit back and listen to and go, wasn't that interesting to hear, our parents actually talk about things as grown adults rather than kids. So that is the summary of why we started this. And obviously we've got a long way to go before we make this any sense professional whatsoever. So let's start with what beers is everyone drinking? I bought a 6-pack of these German beers, and so I'm going to have to just keep drinking them now. So I'm fully committed to finishing them off. Hopefully not all of them tonight, because I've already had one before I came on, so I'm going to be slightly more careful. AJ, what have you gone for?
Same as last week, cooking lager.
Excellent. Solid choice. Jonathan?
So same as you, Sam. I'm just getting through the crate I got from Westbrook's Brewery. This is a Lime Rock in New England IPA, and it's beautiful.
I've got a Elephant in the Room Jumbo Shard.
Jumbo Shard. Very nice. Obviously a word from our sponsor, Chris Horton Personal Training. Chris Horton is available not on the internet and not particularly easy to contact, but he is available for master personal training anywhere you need him. So I can't provide you with his number because I can't remember it off the top of my head. Maybe we'll work on that for the next show. But moving swiftly on to our first topic, are we the last generation that knows how to speak to strangers, right? We all grew up running around in parks, talking to random kids in the playground, knocking on neighbors' doors, sometimes knocking on them and running away, asking for directions, chatting at bus stops, interacting with people in shops. Today, people don't call you. Rare to get a knock on your house. If someone knocks on your house, it's to drop a package off and run off. Nobody asks things. We just text. We stand silently, waiting for delivery, like all at a train station. Okay, so let's go to Shomit Duster the Fourth. What do you think about this? Right, are we the last generation that actually knows how to speak to strangers?
So I'm going to go in with a solid no. So my kids are a bit younger, so they haven't quite got into that whole, I don't know, just want to sit and play games era. They do play with strangers, but they do it in a really weird way, and I think all kids do this, right? They go to a park, they play near some kids, they won't necessarily interact with each other for a very long time, and then eventually one child who's probably a bit bolshier than the other children will kind of make the first approach, and then they'll play together. So there is this thing where, yeah, our kids will do that. I think the knocking on the door thing's quite interesting because actually one of the coaches from rugby did come to my house today, knocked on my door. We had a 15-minute chat at the door. And we live, like where I am, our community's quite good. So within, I don't know, a 1 mile radius, there's maybe 10, 15 families that we know really well, and we pop around each other's houses all the time. So we do have this, and also the kids have it because we're doing it. They wouldn't necessarily, and as we talked about last week, they wouldn't necessarily go out on their own and knock on someone's door, but they do it when they do interact with others. I have a really quick story that I want to tell. So a few years ago, we were in Croatia on holiday, and we got our kids to go to kids club, and Maya made a friend who she'd play with at the pool. We didn't actually speak to her at all. And then I asked Maya what her name was, and she was like, I don't know. I was like, you guys have been playing together for literally a week. How do you not know her name? She was like, oh, she doesn't speak the same language as us. I was like, what? And she was like, she doesn't speak English. So she's been playing with this kid for a week. So then for the final, I think we're there for 10 days. For the final 5 days, we sent her to kids club every day with a different language of, my name is Maya. What is your name? So we went through, so we started with French and Spanish because I knew those. And then we tried Croatian, and then Greek, and we finally we landed on Italian. She was Italian, and then we finally got a name. But yeah,
No.
that's my general opinion. I think kids do, but it might just be because my kids are younger, so they're still in that stage where they're willing to go and interact with others freely.
Excellent.
I like the
maybe
idea
maybe
of
they just don't care. Maybe they're sort of. I think when kids get a bit older, they start to care a bit more, don't they? They get a bit more self-conscious. So I think that's probably the same with my kids when they were younger.
But what about now, though, John? Sounds like things have changed.
Well, there's two parts to this question, isn't there? There's one side is the kids. You know, are they talking to strangers? And the other one is like, were we actually any good at it? Because I'm not sure I was. I'm not sure I can speak to strangers very good or very, very well, but
Very good.
maybe I've always sort of been quite shy inside, even though I probably come across as a bit of an extrovert sometimes. But that largely comes with a few beers. So yeah, I'm terrible at it. I'll walk around a shop for 20 minutes looking for something rather than just asking the person who works there. I'd rather starve than ask directions. I find it just weird. And Ali, my wife, will tell me I'm ridiculous for not asking where something is, or if I can't find something, or there's an empty shelf, like not asking if there's some extra stock out the back. She thinks it's ridiculous, but I just find it kind of socially weird and awkward. So if we ask, are we the last generation? I'm not convinced. I don't think I ever did speak to strangers very well. I was always sort of awkwardly hiding behind my mum. And I just think my kids are probably better than me at it, but not necessarily in the same way you would think. In a shop, I think they'll still have that sort of everyday real life shyness, and we'll have to sort of push them into making any kind of engagement with anyone. But if you put them on Gorilla Tag on their VR goggles, they'll talk to anybody, and it doesn't matter. But I think probably because there's this sort of barrier, they know they're not going to get into any kind of weird, awkward situation because the other kids on the other side are all just playing the game, and they've got to get on with it. So they've got to act like a team. So they kind of have to. So I don't think talking to strangers has disappeared, but I think it's probably just shifted form, right? And now they do it in their virtual worlds, because I mean there is less interaction just by way of how we live these days. So they're really happy to chat to people there. So yeah, I actually think probably the last generation that would talk to strangers, really, in my experience, is my parents. My parents would have talked to strangers, no problem. And they always found it weird that I couldn't, or that I found it difficult to pick up the phone. And even today, I find it quite difficult to pick up the phone. I'd much rather send an email or a text. So, maybe I'm just sort of socially hopeless, and everyone else, so you guys are all functioning perfectly.
Well, I had a look into that, right? So remember Stranger Danger, right?
Yeah.
People heard of that. That's from the 60s, right?
Is it?
It is. It's that far back.
Well,
I didn't realise. I thought it was something that we, came around when we were younger. It's been around forever. There was a campaign called Kids Say No from 1985. I was like, definitely passed me by. I was 3, right? But there've been campaigns to, I suppose, help teach kids about potentially dangerous adults for quite a long time. And so I wonder if you're right, going back even further, it's actually our parents' generation that are completely nonplussed by it. Right?
They just didn't have the same level of news or engagement with what's actually happening. So all these stories of, Jimmy Savile, etc. The stories they wouldn't have heard those stories because it just wasn't available on their device straight away, right? So they wouldn't have that sort of filter. But interesting that campaign goes back so far.
Yeah.
Also, like with our parents' generation, this obviously doesn't apply to everyone, but people lived more in the communities where they grew up. So people hung around in the same area. You tended to live in the same places your parents lived in, going back further. So I don't know if there were that many strangers for them to actually talk to. But if you see your parents in their hometown or something, they're talking to people all the time because everyone has a connection to someone. Oh, that's Marjorie's son, or whatever their connection is. And so I'm sort of with you, John. I don't know if I am actually good at talking to strangers. I think I'm really good at talking to people that I'm introduced to. But I was like, I could make friends with or get along with most people if I'm introduced to them by someone. Last night I was at a client event. I clung like an absolute limpet to like the one person I vaguely knew there, who thankfully knew everyone and just sort of basically took me round by the arm and introduced me to everyone. But I dreaded it all day, not comfortable at all. And I was thinking about why. And it wasn't to do with them being strangers. It was, if I'm really honest, I just thought, why would any of them want to talk to me? It's a professional setting where there are people there who actually could, I don't know, be useful to them in business or make them some money or something like that. And I think we've all been to business stuff where you get talking to someone and you find out that they're like an air conditioning engineer or something like that, and your heart sinks a little bit because you're just like, oh, Jesus, right, okay. And doing what I do, PR, I sort of feel like I sort of have the flip side of that, where I just think, God, why on earth? But their heart's going to sink when they find out what I do. So I don't know if it's fear of talking to strangers per se. I cannot conceive of why they want to.
I totally get that completely. On the flip side, I was at a party once, my brother's 40th, and we met one of the financial controllers at Love Honey. And it was the most fascinating evening, learning about all their supply chain and all their marketing and stuff like that. It was incredible stories.
And you made good use of that discount ever since, right? So
No, I haven't actually. Sam, what do you reckon?
I thought your hat was from Love Honey. Certainly the right colouring. Well, AJ, I was thinking about, you said you were only good when you were introduced to people. I mean, you and I met are waking up in our good friend's flat on a sofa. We weren't introduced. We had to make do and make mend and form a solid bond of friendship based on how both of our feet smell. If I'm not mistaken.
I mean, I presume we were introduced at some point the previous night.
I'm unclear that we were. I recall waking up and looking at you. You were looking at me, and no one else was awake in this Bristol flat. There were a sea of people all over the floor. And
In hindsight, we held that look at each other for a bit too long.
I think we did.
Was it my flat?
No, it was it was Hunty's flat.
Oh, it's Hunty.
It was Hunty's flat.
Can we all agree though that with alcohol, this barrier drops completely, right? I think I'm a completely different person with respect to introducing myself to a stranger after a couple of beers. And that's why, like, corporate event is always much better when you've finished the corporate event and you're in the bar later on. And then that's where real connections are made, right?
Yeah.
Do you think it's the booze? Sorry. Do you think it's the booze per se, or do you think it's just like a crutch? It's just something like what
it
I mean.
Could be
like,
smoking for you,
and if
because it's something to do.
Yeah, and if the conversation dawdles slightly, well, you can take a drink, or you can need to go to the bar and get another drink. It's sort of there's a escape button.
Well, that's sort of what smoking is, isn't it? There's a great Rory Sutherland story about it. Have you heard it?
Yeah, I love Sutherland.
It's so great, and I'll murder it. But basically what he's saying is, if you've got something to do, you can get out of a social situation. So you can go and escape for a couple of minutes. And if you did that without a cigarette, you'd look ridiculous. But if you do it smoking a fag, you look like a fucking philosopher. And and that's the main benefit to smoking. There you go. Just going back to the topic, I was listening to a podcast once, and I can't remember. It was someone.
I was going to say, was it as good as this one?
Oh, it was much better than this one.
Okay.
But it was with a guy. I think it was either with Jonathan Haidt or with Gad Saad, and they were saying, whichever one it was, I can't remember exactly. They were saying that they had a rule with their kids when they were sort of mid-teenagers, that they had to have an interaction with a stranger that day before they would be able to come back in the house and have dinner. And if they hadn't done it, they'd have to go and strike up a conversation with somebody in the local shop or something like that. And it's an interesting idea, that, isn't it? I mean, you'd probably do it for about a week and then get bored of it. But I think there's something in it. I think we do a bit too much stranger danger, don't we? Not everybody's a pedo. Most people aren't, in fact, I would hazard a guess.
New record. 18 minutes. I mean, sorry, no, we got to 15 last time, actually. You're right. So, yeah. It's impressive, though, boys. It's impressive. AJ, yeah, you popped your hand up. Are we going to go along that theme, or are we going to come back?
No. We're swerving child abuse. It's interesting you say that, Hunty, because I actually think that most people have an anxiety about meeting strangers, but it is when we are forced into situations where we have no choice but to meet strangers that you do it and get slightly better at it. So for me, for example, it would be sports teams. Obviously, when you first start playing a sports team or a new person joins a team, you're a youngster, you go in there and you're surrounded by 10 other people that you don't know, and over time you have to get to know them. Or the corporate event. And I quite like the idea of forcing my kids to do it. I can remember, it's not the same, but I can remember when we were young and going on holiday, my parents would force. It was on my sister mine's job to go to the bakery and get the bread every morning. Now, that felt like a sort of a small little thing, but that's just making us as 7-year-olds trot off to the boulangerie and, get a baguette or two. But when you sort of practice it, people have had to do it for so long, it becomes a superpower, right?
But I wonder if on the flip side, if you move around schools lots and get and you have to do that, and you never really get a full set of proper mates. Well, that is the subject for the next podcast, isn't it? Male loneliness, and we can all get depressed about it.
Oh, that sounds great!
Can't wait. We'll put that in the Christmas special. Yeah, let's focus on that. I found a great stat. 1 in 5 people in the UK have never spoken to their neighbours. How depressing is that? That is that felt so bleak. You know, it was one of those stats you're like, can't be right. Need to go and check that. Right. I'll post it later. But yeah, a proper study. That just made me so sad. My neighbours are fantastic. They're absolutely brilliant, also hilarious. As anyone who's been to our house will know, we have an incredible array of neighbours of all types, and all of them are brilliant and lovely. I just find that's so sad. Regularly, Daniel, my eldest, he sort of comes home from school, and we start going, where is he? And he's often outside chatting to one of our older neighbours who's got loads of classic cars. And we'll be like, where have you been? He's like, oh, I've been chatting with Robin and Damon, our neighbours who live across the road, about the latest car that, Robin's bought. I just think it's absolutely amazing. Like that's, and I don't know, maybe that's a byproduct of where we live and it's all built up and crowded and, we all live in tiny houses. So we have to go outside to go and talk to people. But, no, I thought that was just a really interesting, but also depressing stat.
Yeah, that is.
Do you think that's a function of people spending less time in places or moving around more? Is sort of it's?
I think that is a function of it. I think there's also, I don't know if anyone feels similarly or not, but I think AirPods have been a big issue. Right, I feel quite strongly about this. I often sometimes I'll walk out the house and the first thing I'll do is I'll put my AirPods in towards the station. It's only a 10-minute walk, right? I don't really need my AirPods on for that walk. But I sometimes do it because I don't want to talk to anyone.
Yeah, you've got to avoid the crippling anxiety of speaking to somebody you don't know.
Maybe not less just people I don't know, but there's an element, or even people I do know sometimes. I'm just like, I just want to get to the station. Like, sometimes I don't want to have a conversation. I do wonder if there's something interesting about how ubiquitous AirPods have become. And obviously I've succumbed. One point we'll get Dan on here and he'll mock us all because the incredible cynicism we all displayed when AirPods came out, that none of us would ever wear them, as we've obviously all lost. And the public forum, I've now admitted that maybe he was right that people would wear these things. But I think there is something in that. You go to a bus stop and everyone's wearing AirPods, right? They can't hear what you're doing and they don't care. They've detached themselves to a degree from society. And I feel like there's been a series of little things like that have kind of started to erode some of these things. I think the other thing maybe for the kids is, and I think, John, you mentioned this earlier, is this like a real world issue versus an online issue? Because you're absolutely right. My kids are quite happy chatting to other kids online. They'll get thrown into a Fortnite team and be chatting to people all over the place. They're not bothered in the slightest. Right? It doesn't concern them at all. But I know that's a very different thing to going and talking to a stranger in the real world. But it's interesting in a different environment. It doesn't seem to bother them in the slightest.
I tell you what would be really interesting is to go back a couple of generations and ask parents and grandparents how they remember it. And maybe there was some sort of, if you go back far enough, there was some sort of post-war unity in the country that, everybody had a kind of common goal to rebuild. But right now, there doesn't seem to be that unity. There doesn't seem to be a need to speak to strangers, sadly, because there's no community anymore, is there really?
Do you think it's a little bit there? It was sort of ever thus. I don't know. Is it?
Yeah, maybe. That's what I'm saying. It'd be cool to go back and ask. Yeah.
Would our great grandparents have been griping about our grandparents, their kids, saying, "God, they don't do enough. They've always got their head in a book."
Yeah, exactly.
There was this great point in London, or this might just be my memory of it, but 2012 when the Olympics was on, everyone was out and everyone was just excited and chatty and the city just seemed great. I don't, like, AJ, you were in London at that time. Did you feel the same or was it just me?
We were both drinking quite a lot at that time, Samit.
Yes, true.
We were winning a lot of gold medals as well. It definitely felt, it's interesting though, it felt like a golden era, but in hindsight, actually, there were quite a lot of things being stored up then that are now potentially causing issues without getting political, potentially causing issues further down. I'm sorry, not my mic going over. Potentially causing issues down the line, I think. But I think you're right, Shamit. You're right. There was definitely a couple of Olympic weeks where it felt like we were the greatest country on the earth again.
Yeah.
It was the Olympics. I don't know if it necessarily made people friendlier or more open to chats with, with randoms or whatever. I just think it was this huge, especially if you were in London at the time, it was this huge dominating thing. Like there was nothing else at that point. And so it was something that fundamentally everybody had in common. So it made those interactions so much easier because everyone was only talking about the Olympics. So, it's not like you had to sort of find common ground. You had common ground. Everyone had common ground because you had this dominating sort of spaceship that was just, that everyone could see and was talking about.
And I mean, even the Olympics turned our good friend Charlie O'Farrell, notoriously not a particularly easy person to talk to, who became an Olympic volunteer, greeting people around London, probably the most unlikely human being you would ever imagine in the entire world to have been a London 2012 greeter. But he took to it with absolute gusto, I remember. And, he often didn't even talk to us in his own house. But somehow he was sent out as a representative of British citizens and appeared to enjoy it. And I think made some real friends and actually had a great time. So there's certainly hope for everyone, I think. I tell you, I think I mentioned this before we came on, but I had a proper stranger chat this week. I haven't told any of you this. I had a job interview this week. It didn't go very well. That's going to be the summary. I wouldn't say it went badly, but it didn't go well. It certainly didn't go as well as I was hoping it was going to go. And for the first time in a while, I came out of something. My immediate thought was, I think I need a pint. Because that did not go to plan. And I looked around and there was, of course, because I was in London, there was a pub immediately in my eye line where I walked. Bear in mind, this was at just after 1 o'clock on Thursday. Walked straight in and brilliantly, it had a bar, like an American style bar. And there was a lady sat there with a pint. And I sat down next to her and said, can I have a pint and just have a chat with you? Because I think I've just massively balls up a major life thing here. And I sat with Patsy, who is a photographer, who was doing an art course, works down in Woolwich. So Patsy, if you ever listen to this, you honestly made my hour and a half because I was in a really bad place and I ended up just striking up a completely random conversation with this lovely lady. And it made me realize that when I saw this question, John, I thought, you realize at some certain point how important it actually is to be able to navigate that world and just to be able to have a random chat with somebody, because I don't think Patsy realized how much I needed a conversation with a random stranger at that point in time. And it was a brilliant hour and a half. And I promised her, because I talked about that we did this podcast, I would give a shout out to where she works, which is at Thameside Studios, which is this incredible collective of artists. And I sort of go down and go and have a look around. So something on our joint to-do list to go and do is to go and meet Patsy down in Thameside Studios, because she was evangelical about the power of art, and how she found an amazing place to go and meet people because she really suffered from anxiety. And I thought that was just when I saw this thing, I thought actually there's something really interesting in not the coincidence in that. I don't particularly believe in coincidences, but I thought it was something really lovely to go, I haven't done that for a very long time, had a conversation with somebody completely random in a completely random situation. And I realized I need to do it more. And even prompting this question makes you go, you should get out there and talk to more people. So, AJ, pop your hand up.
I was just going to ask about it, mate. I do not mean this salaciously at all. How old was Patsy? My point is more, right, that in that situation you just described, I think the person for a woman would have to be probably my mum's age or slightly younger before I would be too afraid that it would look like I was sharking, essentially.
Oh, I see exactly what you mean. Yeah. Did it look like I went into a bar and tried to hit on a woman in the afternoon?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. For clarity for my wife, that's not what I did. Patsy was a slightly older lady. So.
Okay.
I don't know why we're nodding like.
Yeah, I mean, we'll edit this silence out later,
Do I need to clarify more things here? Sorry.
We're all imagining your journey
people are
this
thinking,
afternoon.
Patsy Kensit? Patsy from Fab? Like, where are you going with this, Sam? No, Patsy was just a lovely, older than me
Lady.
So
That's a nice story, Sam. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives me a bit of hope because I was sort of convincing myself over when I'm thinking about this question that actually we're all sort of fucked and we're all, the end of this is our kids sitting in a room like Ready Player One, in a stack of old caravans playing VR and only living in a virtual world and never coming out. But maybe there is hope.
Maybe there is hope. And I think on that note, let's move on to our next topic. John, you're going to introduce this one. I got it.
We haven't done our stories, have we? You've only done yours, but
Oh, did you have a story to tell, Sean? If you've got a story to tell,
I had a story that
if you'd like to tell your story, then we're ready. We're here and ready.
I'd love to tell my story because I've actually written it out.
Oh,
okay. So picture this: December 2020. We've just entered our second national lockdown following the spread of a global pandemic from an obscure seafood market of Wuhan, China. As a result of this, I've been meeting with the same small group of friends individually for occasional external meetings / beer walks for pretty much a year, as well as millions of Zooms, house parties, and whatever other calls we had at the time. Frankly, at this stage, I'm slightly confused how we have anything to talk about because no one's done anything. My alcohol tolerance is through the roof. My vaping capabilities are unrivaled. This is where I am. So one day, my wife suggests I go for a walk with someone who lives down the road, a man I've never met before and whose wife, Ellie, has only had fleeting encounters with a handful of times. Apparently, he doesn't have many friends in the local area. So I think to myself, is this my problem? I've got enough friends already. And then I realize, hey, if those doctors and nurses can go out every day, overwhelmed and underpaid, I can do my bit.
I'm genuinely intrigued where you're going with this, mate. Keep going.
So one Friday morning, I set off to Selkirk Road with a rucksack full of booze and a heart full of joy. I knocked on the door to ask his mum if he's allowed to come out and play. Obviously, his mum doesn't actually live there. It was a little bit awkward to start with as we navigated like the feeling out part of it. Is he secretly a racist? Did he vote for Brexit? Is his favorite song "Oh Stick You" by Daphne and Celeste? The answer to all of those is no. So after a bit of booze, the chat began to flow. We found ourselves at ease with each other, holding hands, giggling like schoolgirls, and we didn't return home for a good few hours after his curfew. So a bond was formed. The point of this story is, as a result of this random suggestion by Ellie during lockdown, James, who lives 2 streets away, is now one of my closest friends. Our kids play together. We see them several times a week, and that was born of absolutely nothing. Didn't know him. Just a friend of a friend said he hasn't got any friends around.
Oh, that's lovely. And I feel like we've now got a new weekly segment with Shamit's story time. Just checking, were the times you saw him, were they during transition periods during COVID? Just to check.
No, it was during the time you're allowed to go for a walk with one individual.
Got it.
Thus the pointed individually.
Individually, okay. So there was no liberal use of the word individually or transition period. This might be something we return to repeatedly throughout the podcast, listeners. And one point, we'll explain to you why. So, AJ, I can't work out if you've undone another button on your shirt. If this is some kind of
no, I'm just sitting at an angle. Yeah, sorry.
Every 30 minutes, another one comes down. So,
no, apologies. It's just for you, obviously.
No, it's lovely. I mean, if you keep going if you want to. I don't think any of the well, certainly the listeners. I won't describe how visually appealing AJ is at this time, but on the YouTube to look at any. Sean, that was lovely, mate. That's really nice, and it's nice that one of your, like you say, having tall friends, as we call them in this group, introducing a new one, and then not just as a one-off, but then becoming a really regular mate. That's fantastic.
Yeah. He's a nice guy.
I did not do that. Did anyone else do that? I stuck firmly to my work. Just buckled down and worked. Didn't do anything else.
Good question.
So you didn't do beer walks?
I didn't do beer walks. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't see the opportunity.
It's great.
No, I don't. Do you know what, John? I'm actually with you. I don't think I particularly did anything exciting with new people. I remember AJ. We did I think you were there as well, Shamit, weren't you? I'm trying to remember who did it. Didn't we do some murder mystery game on Zoom, which was actually excellent? I recall.
It was excellent.
Oh, was that the jury service one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
that was really good. I really enjoyed that.
Really enjoyed that. Anyway, we digress. Let's move on to our second topic. Unless anyone has any further points, I don't want to. AJ, have you got a prepared script and story?
No, I don't think I've become friends with a stranger since I first went to the workplace. So,
is this the time though? Has this conversation convinced you that tomorrow, right,
No.
on the weekend, as you walk to the shops, you're going to stop someone and just say, "Hey, we should have a chat"? No.
All right, let's move on.
Let's move
on. I got a question for you guys, and it's a really simple one. And it's just: are we addicted to upgrades and updates that really change nothing? I think we're probably all immediately thinking about the iPhone, right, or whatever phone you've got. That's the sort of thing which gets updated to a lot because the financial model kind of suits it. If you're renting, if you're sort of doing that pay monthly phone thing, then you just can upgrade anyway, and it's fine. But there are other things on there, like software will update itself, and there are other things in your life, like a car comes to the end of a lease, but you probably don't need a new car, but you get it anyway just because that's the deal. And I just wanted to know your opinion on it because for me, I think I've changed my opinion on it. I think it used to matter for me, but I don't think it matters anymore. And I'll tell you more about that after you guys tell me your opinion. Sam, what do you reckon?
I think my views on it, I would argue, have evolved to a degree, right? But I think that's slightly been more about my relatively precarious financial situation over probably the last 5 years. As many of you know, I love getting new things. I was quite happy getting a new iPhone every year. That iPhone upgrade program was catnip for me. It was almost like they designed an entire system to draw mugs like me in, and I was ready for it. And then as I've been in a less good financial shape for a little while now, I was kind of forced to stop doing that. Suddenly it was, I'm not going to get whatever the latest iPhone is every year. And I've realized it kind of didn't really make any difference, which obviously depressed me intensely because I've been upgrading iPhones all the way through. I think I've got every iPhone all the way up to 11 each time. I don't think I really skipped any. I just kept renewing every year. But really, we got to a point where when I took a break from that because I couldn't afford to do it, I realized there was really nothing had changed. Functional stagnation, I think, is a great phrase I saw online to talk about this. Just incremental changes. I looked into it. Younger people are upgrading more still. That's still a thing, right? I wonder if this is maybe again, us old codgers, but I saw that 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds replaced their smartphone within 2 years. And that figure drops for every subsequent age group. And actually, average smartphone replacement, I had a look at the moment, a couple of years ago, it was every 3.6 years, which actually feels much more common with our iMac now. And I try to think of some parallels to this, because there are some things that I still think that if I leave them long enough, they have such a big update that I find it really interesting still. And a really boring example of this is helmet earphones, which, as some of you know, has been my ongoing passion for nearly 25 years of listening to music whilst I wear a helmet at various different sporting activities. They don't change that much. every 5 years they add a feature that I've been waiting 5 years for, and I feel really, really excited. It feels like the old iPhone again, where every year something new and exciting, they added something that was brilliant, and that category in particular still feels really exciting. But it really depends, I think, on the category. And it weirdly made me think of cars a bit, in that, if you think about the Porsche 911, they're still incrementally upgrading that, and they've been doing that for 60 years. But actually, you're probably not changing that every 2-3 years. You're probably keeping that for a lot longer. And you start to appreciate those incremental gains the longer you leave the gap, I think. And you become more and more jaded if you're just constantly on that hamster wheel of, I've got a slightly better camera, I've got a slightly better battery. So I kind of get more excited now by leaving a huge gap, because I really feel the difference, or I really kind of see the difference. So I wonder if we're less addicted to innovation, we're more addicted to novelty.
Yeah, 100%. You're absolutely right about that. It's not the nice thing about it is the shiny new thing, isn't it? For about a day. And actually, I think that a lot of the exciting bit is actually the research as well, leading up to it. I mean, less so with an iPhone, because you're just going to buy the latest iPhone. But if you're upgrading a car, for example, I spend a lot of time on Auto Trader, looking through all the stats and checking out all how it all compares. What's the M4 like compared to the M3, or is it an Aston Martin Rapide or is it a 911? What's the differences, and how can we how for the same price, what the different years. That's really fun. But I think if I ever pulled the button on, pulled the trigger on some kind of fun car like that, rather than just a sort of run-of-the-mill SUV that we drive at the moment, I think I'd have a bit of buyer's remorse straight away, and I'd be sort of, I'd miss the research bit. So it's not the upgrade that, for me, that's exciting. It's the sort of leading up to it. It's the anticipation.
I think I agree. Say, like, we lease, so our car gets chopped in every 3 or 4 years, and ours has just come to the end of the lease, and I should change it, but I've just gone into rolling because I can't be bothered to do the research. And I have a spreadsheet. I have every single SUV. I have the boot sizes. Like, speed isn't actually that important nowadays because we're just ferrying kids around. But I'll spend weeks and weeks looking at everything and trying to figure out what's the best car I can get for essentially the cheapest price. But that's fun.
Yeah,
I enjoy it.
it is fun, isn't it? But sometimes you realize that, like Sam says, that the differences are so minimal. Actually, if you wait for longer, you get that extra bump in functionality. But also if you come back to phones, probably the biggest reason I would upgrade now is battery, because my battery's sort of dead. It lasts about half as long as it used to. I'm on an iPhone 13 and the 17's out now. That's pretty much the only reason. That and the camera. Everything else is sort of so incremental. It doesn't matter, does it? Like, if you think back to VHS to DVD, for example, what an upgrade that was. Or cinema to IMAX or something like that. Yeah. It's an enormous upgrade. But now, I don't know. Like, if Zoom updates itself on your computer, just as you're gonna, you're entering a meeting, you're already a minute or two late, and then Zoom says performing an update, come back. You're like, oh my God, what the hell? Because it's not going to give me anything, like not even a percentage point better user experience. So why is it doing it then? Do it in the background when I'm not trying to use Zoom.
John, when you were just talking about that, reminded me of the time many, many years ago when I believe you pretty much remortgaged everything you owned to buy a Pioneer plasma TV.
It was.
Do you remember
so cool,
that? Because you were the first one to get one, and I still recall it. I mean, I remember it 20 years ago when you bought it. Remember it was a Pioneer plasma. It cost you so much money that you were genuinely concerned for your finances. I remember at the time. I'm joking.
Well, that happens with all the AV
with your
kit
now wife, who was, I think, your girlfriend at the time. But my God, the difference was incredible, wasn't it? It was such a leap forward. Whereas, we've been talking about getting our, one of our sons needs a new phone, and I just can't get excited about it. It's just not interesting. No. And even he doesn't seem that excited about it. Even he was like, I don't really need a new one. Just get a middle of the road one. Doesn't really matter, does it? Like, as long as the battery's good. And even, so that's interesting, even at the younger generation age, that he cares more about, is it going to run out of battery all the time, than can it do stuff. He doesn't seem that fussed, but I worry that's because he's taken on too many of my character traits, which are obviously terrible. So hopefully we can beat them out of him as time goes on. AJ.
I come in slightly different for you guys. I'm not a stuff guy. Like, I've never been bothered. I've never upgraded unnecessarily. And usually it's when my phone's broken or has become unusable or won't update the iOS anymore. The only thing that I know for a fact that I sort of upgrade is about 20 years ago, Max Van Summeren very solemnly told me about how when he gets a new toothbrush, he buys the most expensive one he can to see what developments there have been in toothbrush technology since he last bought one. And as a result of that, until we got an electric toothbrush, obviously that's a different kettle of fish. When I was buying handheld toothbrushes, I would spend as much as I possibly could on a toothbrush each time just to see what had changed and how it was going to affect my dental hygiene.
How much is the most expensive toothbrush you bought?
Oh, I don't know. I can't remember. It would have been many years ago now. I can imagine that I don't know. I can imagine I would have gone up to 25 quid or something like that at some point for something that promised the earth. That's honestly the only thing I can think of, and I have Max Van Summeren to blame for that. I don't think I've ever been a upgrade get stuff guy. The flip side is that, going back to the research stuff, I do love the research. I spent probably a similar amount of time deciding which £40 cabin bag to buy as I did in buying a house. I spent so long doing it, just comparing all different options. And part of that was functionality, part of that was look, part of that was, brand, whatever. But it's almost like a paralysis where I'm petrified of getting something that's inferior. You see what I mean?
Yeah, you don't want to make the wrong decision, do you?
Yeah,
Right.
it's less about making the right decision, more about not wanting to make the wrong one.
Yeah,
absolutely. And you hear that about like sports people say that they don't. It's not that they love winning; they just really hate losing. And so I think it's probably a similar sort of vibe to that.
Makes sense.
But look, it's never really been my thing. But if you sort of flip it to subscription model stuff and how sort of people sort of maybe are tending towards, I've got to say, I think like subscription model stuff, it's a really good thing. I think, talking about cars, I looked at stats on this. RAC a couple of years ago said that cars on average are idle. They do nothing 96% of the time. It's bonkers. That companies do not tie up their capital in vehicles in that way. So it seems crazy that I have chosen to do so with a car. But I understand the sort of wanting to ownership. But really, if you could guarantee you could have a car whenever you wanted it, but on a subscription model, then I would have no problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Shomit, we'll come to you because you did actually have your hand up ahead of AJ, but
Oh no, it's fine. No,
I'm still learning of how the system works.
But also, I feel like it was AJ's turn to talk. So on the whole, like, I forgot where I was going to go. Essentially, we're tight is where I was going to go. So we don't do the upgrading iPhones because both Ellie and I just do not see the point in the cost. We'll buy them outright. We won't do it on a contract. I'm on an iPhone 15, and like AJ, I will keep that running until it basically bricks itself, and then I'll have to buy a new one. The research bit, so I love doing research on lots of things, but the majority of the research I'm doing is basically ensuring that I get the best thing for the cheapest price. So it's all about trying to save money. That's literally what we're constantly doing. And I think it's good because Ellie's a lot tighter than I am, so it kind of helps me balance our spending. But I think essentially we won't upgrade. We just don't upgrade for the sake of it. We upgrade when we need to.
So probably then, if we're rounding off this section, we're saying we're not at all addicted to it, and our kids don't seem to be either.
Well, actually, on the kids' point, this is it's slightly different because mine, and again, they are younger, they just don't understand the value of things. So
Yeah.
they'll drop an iPad and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And they're like, it's fine if it breaks, you'll just buy a new one. Like, will I fuck? Like, you know, they don't get it. They'll just be like, oh, you'll just get something else. You'll replace it.
Yeah.
So their understanding of, you know, the concept of money isn't quite there. We're getting there
No, well,
slowly.
they haven't got that, have they? They haven't got that understanding. And they know that if they drop one and break it, a new one will appear. So we're sort of probably we're all reinforcing that. I don't know, like when does that change? Maybe when they get jobs.
Well, we've given ours cards now, so they're 6 and 7. They have cards. They have their own money. So we're starting to like eke that in. And I think if something like if they smashed up their iPad, like stupidly, I might actually enforce you need to save up to buy a new iPad, and that's going to take you a very long time. I'd say that, but actually I wouldn't because they need them for school. So
we have a one screen replacement rule with our devices. So Leo has never dropped his phone really. He's got a crack in his screen because he was on a swing and it dropped into a river, and we came back an hour later and it was still there underwater with a small crack.
Really quickly, he was on a swing and it dropped into a river.
On a swing, and his phone dropped out of his pocket into a river. There's like a rope swing down the bottom of
like
our...
a rope.
Right, okay. So
I think it's a dangerous playground. So
What an idyllic Fable
It's not a
5 life
design
you live,
playground.
Hunty. This is...
swings near
Yeah.
rivers. That feels dangerous. Yeah.
It's a tire swing in the woods. It's cool. Anyway, so he hasn't done it, but Rex has dropped his phone a number of times, and to the point where we bought him a new screen replacement once, and then the next time we had to pay for it, and it's like 80 quid.
That's good.
So, yeah. Well,
Nice.
you've got to try and teach them something. I'm not sure I'm teaching mine many things, but that is one thing I'm trying.
No, I think that's fair. I think we Daniel broke his iPad screen. Never fixed it. We just said, if you want to get it fixed, you can pay for himself. He sort of double bluffed us in his intelligent way and was like, well, I just won't get it fixed then. And now he has this cracked iPad screen that we have to constantly safeguard in all situations because it can't get wet. It can't go anywhere. It's really, we're worried he's going to smash his fingers on it, but we have refused to replace it. But he's also refused to pay to get it replaced and just deals with it. And what he's worked out now is he doesn't kind of need to replace it because he's got a phone. So we now have this slightly smashed iPad that no one really knows what to do with, and we're at a kind of a standoff. So unresolved at this point.
Imagine how many smashed iPads there are in the world.
Yeah.
Will be millions. Anyway, on that note, let's move on, shall we? Sam, you've got a question about cars.
Is horsepower pointless now, right? Modern cars are now so fast that you can't use full power anywhere legally, right? Lots of things can do 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, except in a world where there's traffic lights every 300 meters and there's all kinds of 20 mile per hour speed limits. So I'm just genuinely interested now. Is it just all pointless, right? Is the horsepower race over? We've all given up. Where do we go? And we're going to go straight to Jonathan Hunt.
Well, I do have an opinion on this. I started, when I thought about this, first of all, I thought, it probably is pointless, isn't it? Because you can probably have more fun, in a knackered old 205 GTI than you would in a mega supercar. And then I gave myself a bit of a slap and I thought, no, of course it's not. Horsepower's brilliant. The more power, the better. Right? The noisier, the better. Great. Even if it might be slower around a track. So if you think about that, was it the Lotus Evija? That was 2,000 or knocking on 2,000 horsepower. And it got absolutely spanked around Nürburgring by things like modded Nissan GTRs and GT3 RSs. So 2,000 horsepower sounds amazing, doesn't it? But it didn't really do anything for a lap time in the green hell. So what's it for? But I think probably it's for the kind of people like me who don't have the skills of a racing driver, just to boot it once in a while and feel what it's like to be on a roller coaster on the road. I think it's amazing. I love it. I mean, there's that new Porsche Cayenne out, isn't there? Have you seen the Turbo S? With over 1,000 horsepower through a hybrid powertrain. 1,000 horsepower in an SUV is wild. It's absolutely bananas. But that thing would be really fun to drive. Why not? Why can't we have it? I mean, there is lots of logical arguments not to. You know, yeah, roads are too narrow in the UK. You very quickly catch up with a lorry. Like, what are you doing driving fast on a public road anyway? When you're going to kill everybody around you for going, you know, knocking into trees and exploding everywhere. But it doesn't really matter, because I think the cars that have these mega horsepower ratings or mega horsepower numbers are not for the public road. If you think about our good buddy's green STO Lamborghini, that is an amazing thing. When we took it up to Anglesey and had a rag around there, it was incredible.
Yeah.
But he'll never drive it that fast on the road.
No, you're absolutely right, John. And that's a really important point we need to very quickly make. So for legal reasons, everything we say in this section is purely hypothetical, definitely would never happen on UK roads. It's a dramatic fictional story based on events that may have happened to people that look like us. Just so we're clear. I checked quickly into self-incrimination online, and as long as we are careful to ensure our fictional stories are not specific, recent, verifiable, tied to identifiable evidence, then I think the police will have bigger priorities. So with that caveat, please continue talking.
Well, look, I will tell you, on that day that we went up to Anglesey, there were 2 GT3 RSs, 2 Lamborghini STOs. There was a brilliant little Yaris GR. I was in a 911 GTS. There was an M2 Comp, and there was a Lotus Emira. We were very well behaved on the roads, very well behaved, because we knew at the end of it all, we've got a track to race around, and it was amazing. It was a hell of a day. But I was
Where'd
in my
you get the
brother's
911
car.
from?
My brother lent it to me.
Oh, nice.
In one of the most special brotherly moves you've ever seen. But I was a bit careful with it. He did say he wanted a photo of me sliding it around a hairpin with masses of smoke billowing out the back. But I was like, come on, man, I can't do that. And when I'm hitting 140 on the main straight as you come round to the right and up to this first little hairpin, and I'm saying to myself on every lap, not my car, not my car, not my car. You know, it feels crazy, but that was fast enough. And what's that, 450 horsepower or something like that? But the Lamborghini STO that we were in is another couple of hundred horsepower on that. Is unbelievably fast. It was 10 seconds a lap quicker than I was doing in the 911, and it was amazing. So I don't think, even though I started thinking, yeah, maybe it's pointless, and we're fine with little cars that just knock around country roads like the old 205 GTI. It's not true, really. If anyone gave us a 2,000 horsepower supercar, we'd definitely have fun in it. That's my opinion.
Let's move on. Shamit.
I think I'm with you ultimately. But it doesn't really have a place in normal life, does it? So I'd happily get in one and race it around the track, or even sit in a passenger seat and be driven around the track and shit myself. I would absolutely love it, but I wouldn't buy one. I wouldn't use it on UK roads. It's kind of, it's a strange middle ground, because having the opportunity to sit in cars like that, so the STO, on a UK road, it was fun, but it would be much more fun on a track. But being able to do that, not many people get to do it.
Yeah, you're right. Hardly anyone gets it. It's a serious privilege to be invited to that track day where I went in Anglesey. But for the daily drive, you don't need it at all, do you? I'm driving through Bath, dropping the kids off, or going to work or whatever. I'm going pootling along at 20 miles an hour. I could have 10 horsepower, it'd be fine.
I mean, it wouldn't, but yeah.
AJ, what do you reckon?
I can't think of anyone less qualified to speak authoritatively on this subject. I will say this. I haven't driven many cars. I haven't driven any high-performance cars that I can think of. But the most fun car I've ever driven was my dad's old Triumph Spitfire, which has lower brake horsepower than the estate car that I ferried my family around in. So, but again, it's a day-to-day thing. That obviously would be useless and pointless on the track. But if you're going around country lanes, jazz hassing it to a cricket match, well, it's a perfect car. You're low to the ground. It feels like you're going faster than you are, and you have to fight it like Billy-O to get around any corner. So it feels like you're actually driving it. I suppose, going back to what the the main question was, one of the things that sort of was raised was if the time of high horsepower has passed or whatever. I think it's a bit of a misnomer that sort of implies there ever was a day where this wasn't the case, right? Have any of these cars ever truly been real world usable? Obviously, they are great around tracks, and that's what they're designed for, as John said. But are the roads that much different now to when our dads were driving their cars in their 20s? Probably not. I mean, there's fewer cars on the roads then, I guess. At the same time, they were working with less powerful cars themselves then. So it's probably a bit of a misnomer, the idea that we've sort of passed some golden age. Equally, without having any knowledge, I would subscribe to what John and Shamit have just said, which is that, of course, it makes a difference. And if you have the ability to use it on the track for things such as that, well, of course it makes a difference. And of course it's going to be more fun if you have more power sat behind you.
There is also, like, have you ever just, got someone to fire up a car and just rev it? And the excitement of just hearing that. Like, you're not even in the car, you're not driving anywhere. It's just like, oh, that engine sounds awesome.
It's great, isn't it? But we're going to lose it, aren't we? But we're going to lose it to two opposing ideas. One is mega horsepower, and the other is environmentally friendly, sort of slightly boring electric cars. That Evija that I was talking about is fully electric. You'll never get that sort of weird, I don't know, what is it, appreciation of some kind of soul that we say cars have, but we don't really mean
This is
that.
a question rather than a statement, because I genuinely want to know. Is that just a vibe thing for you guys that are more versed in this stuff than I am? Because as I understand it, for example, on acceleration, don't electric cars sort of outdo nearly all?
By a stretch, by a long way. I had the Tesla Model S for a while, and it was really fun on going up a slip road, getting to 70 miles an hour exactly, officer. And it was really, really fast and great fun and a good car. It's an amazing machine. It's just not that exciting, is it?
Is it the vibrations, the sound? Is it just vibe?
Yeah, it's just vibes, isn't it?
It's a bit dull because it's like a whine rather than a roar.
Yeah,
Everyone wants to roar in their life.
If you were going to set a sort of environmental policy for cars for the people, you wouldn't ban these awesome cars, right? You would let Ferrari do whatever they want and Lamborghini do whatever they want, and sure, some control on emissions, but they're not really the problem, although people would like to make them the sort of poster boy for the problem. The problem is the 4 million Ford Fiestas on the road. So if you can turn all those into electric cars with some horsepower, you could even make them a bit fun, right? They could all be quite fast, but then leave the Ferraris alone.
Did you ever see that? It's a long time ago now, but I've remembered it. There was an episode of the old Top Gear where James went to visit Jay Leno in California and saw his car collection. And Jay Leno put it quite well, I thought, with sort of the supercars and the jazzy cars that he had there. With like the march of electric cars, the way he put it was that the car saved the horse and turned it into sort of a luxury item. You see what I mean? And that's probably where we will end up with electric cars. You're right, Hunty. They are not the supercars and the like. They are not the problem environmentally. So perhaps the growth of electric car for day-to-day stuff means you have these things that remain as like I say, luxury items, almost sort of kind of works of art sort of thing that are there to be purely enjoyed rather than used in any sort of functional way at all.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Sam, what do you reckon?
So I looked at the question quite a few times. I did all the other research and then kept coming back to this. Is horsepower pointless now? And I came to the conclusion it's never been more important. It's the most important thing ever right now because it's all about to come crashing down. So, because there's that word now, right? And I think we're in this interesting phase. You talked about electric cars with 2,000 horsepower, right? We are about to enter into a world, and I've talked to you guys about this separately, but, I've been to San Francisco. I've been in a Waymo, right? John, you've had a Tesla, right? You've experienced some level of self-driving, right? It's done. It's already done, right? Waymo launches in London reasonably soon. Okay,
Yes, a couple of months.
couple of months now. People are going to realize very quickly, and to your point, AJ, exactly, right? And actually, JJ, your dream's about to become true. You're not going to need to invest that capital in having a car sat outside your house all the time, because somebody's just going to come and pick you up and take you to wherever you want to go. Okay. So is horsepower pointless now? Of course it's pointless now, which means right now we need to enjoy it as much as you possibly can. I think, as you all know, I've now got to a point where, and I remember there was a great thing Clarkson said years ago that, he sort of said, really, you need to have minimum of 400 horsepower, like minimum, to overtake things safely. And of course, I've had some quite good cars now. I'm way past that. 500 minimum now. Absolute minimum. My car feels like, and I know my car's got somewhere over 400, feels slow as anything. I need more than 500 everywhere I go. And I think we even, you even post some sub questions, I think, here, John, like when have you actually floored a car and held it? All the time. And
Yeah, today.
in a fictional world, I do it. But I actually wrote like a list of times I've done it, in all kinds of different situations, particularly when I was working up with a automotive manufacturer in the Midlands area, regularly would just put my foot to the floor and go, genuinely intrigued to see how fast I can go. What number might pop up on the screen, and at what point will I take my foot off before either, I'm panicking because this is so crazy, I don't think I'm in control anymore, or will it hit the limiter? And invariably, I ended up hitting the limiter on most occasions. I was like, I'm so intrigued to see what this can do. So,
For legal reasons, that was always 70.
The limiter in first gear.
yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Always. So I think the thing when you talk about horsepower and pointlessness, I think the thing that has become pointless for me is actually that top speed, though, right? I feel like I've done that now, right? I feel like maybe that was a thing when I had more fear, less responsibilities. I was less concerned about. Obviously, at some point, we'll discuss the incident in Germany where, it was interesting for me to learn about top speed and what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. But I just think top speed is pointless. Acceleration, however, I'm very happy with. And I think my bigger concern is how many drivers we are putting on the road in incredibly high performance electric cars who have no idea what they're doing, right? Who've never spent time on the track, who've never driven a go-kart, right? They've had no driver training whatsoever. And suddenly they've got a car that can do 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. I actually had a look. And there's a really interesting study by an insurer in Switzerland about drivers in electric cars are causing 50% more damage, 50% more collisions with damage to their own vehicles compared to drivers of internal combustion engine cars. And they specifically link this increased collision rate to the faster acceleration of electric cars. So
Do you think if you have a car that accelerates faster than, say, 5 seconds, you should have some kind of performance training? Should be a separate license, like in the same way as automatic and manual is a separate license in the UK?
Well, I think in the Waymo world, 100%, I think you do, because you're suddenly going to be in a world where every single person is in a much safer car than you, and I think you're going to have to justify that you deserve to be allowed to drive. And I think actually that's probably a good thing. So I think there might come this kind of golden age where, and I don't think it's going to happen. And again, not being political, it's certainly not going to happen under this government. There might be other types of governments that might go for this, where they go, yeah, you're allowed to drive, but you've got to be really well trained to do it now, because you've got to be so good to mix it up in a world of autonomous cars that you're going to have to pass better tests, and you're going to have to pass more advanced tests, and you've got to prove that you are allowed to control these things. So,
And also, sorry,
no.
everyone will be driving less. So your periods between getting behind the wheel and actually driving is quite conceivable. You could not have physically driven a car for 3 months, and then you're behind an electric car where the acceleration is insane.
Yeah.
It's there's like they wouldn't let a pilot do that, for
No.
example.
No, exactly not. And I think
But surely that's where tests will go, right? So if in future people will learn to drive in electric cars and they'll be tested in an electric car. So I mean, in an ideal world, who knows what will happen, but that's, as things progress in real life, that should be reflected in the testing system. regardless of having like an additional test. It just should be the test.
But you can bet it won't be, can't you?
Well, to start with, 100%. We'll be 10 years behind.
Yeah. How many people will die? Yeah.
But I think you touched on it earlier, John, about this idea, does joy live, is there much joy in performance if it's not real well usable? I mean, that's a real challenge. And I think you and I experienced this when we went and did the NC 500. It was like being in another world where it felt like speed limits were a slight irrelevance. There was so little around, let alone traffic, let alone people, let alone animals. It felt like we were on the moon half the time when we went up.
You were using all of your horsepower there, though.
Pardon?
You were using all of your horsepower. And I was using all of mine, but you were still on the horizon compared to me.
Yeah, but I think that idea of where, can you get joy out of these things if the performance isn't real well usable? Yeah, I think you can to a certain degree. And I think now where I've ended up, like, no, I don't have 500 horsepower anymore, right? But, I drove back from Manchester recently with both the boys, wood and leather in my Jag. We had Jurassic Park soundtrack on tape. Absolutely brilliant. Bit of, Dennis Nedry mix. Older son in the front because I can't trust the younger ones with the buttons. Dog in the back. Youngest lying down horizontally having a nap. And it definitely made me think, I know I'm starting to get on a bit. Maybe I'm losing my edge perhaps. But, there was real joy in that journey, even though I know we could have been going faster, I think. But we had a nice time just mooching around. And when I'm round here where we live, it's 20 miles an hour if I'm lucky. There's so much traffic, I don't really go anywhere. So I think there's still joy to be had from these things, but it's just, there's a window. I feel the window is closing rapidly, right? This week we had the budget, we had paper mile with electric cars. Inevitably that's going to go further. So I feel like we're in the end of the golden era. And the fact that there are still manufacturers out there putting out crazy horsepower cars, right now it's still not pointless. It's going to become pointless very soon, I think. And I think that's for me, obviously, as a car enthusiast, it's a hugely sad thing. And the worry is about where does that ultimately end up? I think AJ just talks about that, do the car and the horse, right? Do we end up with these things being luxury, or do they end up just getting banned and you're just not allowed to do certain things in the same way that you're not riding a horse on the motorway, right? Are you actually in a position where you're not allowed to drive your own car on a motorway, because actually that's reserved for autonomous vehicles? Okay. And I think there's going to be a very interesting shift, I think, when particularly governments wake up to the fact that an autonomous car is much safer. And should we let any human drive if they can't prove that they're incredibly good at it?
I was as you know, I was in India today. And one of the places I went to was a new real estate development, which is next to a racetrack called the Nanoli Speedway. So they're building this racetrack at the moment. We had a drive around it, and they've got next to it this sort of circular vault where supercars can be kept. Because if you live in Mumbai or Pune, you've got a supercar. What can you do? Cruise around at 5 miles an hour in traffic? I mean, it has some level of excitement, I suppose. But if you really want to drive it properly, you'll keep it there at a racetrack, and you'll use it on that racetrack pretty much only. And because everywhere else in India, some of it's good roads, some of it you'll have a motorway and then a speed bump, and a cow will appear. So you can't really use it there. But I think this, perhaps, you're talking about the sort of death of it, and maybe that the government will say, okay, well, some of these roads are only electric cars or only autonomous cars. Well, there will be enclaves, don't you think, of enthusiasts with these, even if it's historic machines, somewhere for them to use those machines.
Of course they will.
Yeah.
It would be like people that enjoy shooting, having shotguns, keep them in a cabinet somewhere. You obviously can't use that in inverted commas the real world. But
not allowed to use those on the motorway.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, PC gone mad, isn't it? But it'll be like that. They will become this thing that's stored away. And look, I think what you're saying about like roads being reserved for just autonomous cars, whatever, we're quite a long way away from that, Sam, if it ever happens, purely because of you've got this huge rump of non-autonomous cars out there. It's going to take a long time before, and no government will ever imagine the uproar if if people are banned from driving their car they have. It's so far in the future.
I
Also,
see.
what's
I
the
see.
tax implication
Pardon?
on that?
Hmm?
What's the tax implication on that as well? How much money would they lose? I don't actually know. I don't know anything about that.
So
but
my come out to that be, until you've been in one, genuinely, the shift is so profound so quickly, right? People won't care. I genuinely don't think they'll care. They'll suddenly go, actually, I don't want to drive anymore. I'd quite happily get in this thing and be taken somewhere. I think this, because I think the shift will be led by consumers. I think people will go, I want this now. I want this immediately. And even Lindsay and I, right? Her car company policy thing's coming up. And it appears that Tesla is the only option. Whatever we want is a Tesla of some description. And one of the big debates we just had was, we know roughly what her budget will be from her company car policy. And the full self-driving option is £6,000. So it's a very expensive option, right? But are we actually better off getting the worst base model, but getting that, because it means we won't have to drive anywhere, actually. And I've already said 100%. I'm ready, right? I'm there already. And I think that shift, AJ, will happen very, very, very quickly. I know in San Francisco, having been there, right, Uber and everything's been decimated instantly because most people got in a Waymo and went, this is better. It's safer. There's a real consistency to this. The price is a little bit more, but we didn't take a cab the whole month we were there. We only took Waymo everywhere on every journey that we did because that was what we wanted to do. Once we'd experienced it once, that was it. It was game over. And even now, getting in a cab in London now feels incredibly old-fashioned to me now. I think that change will happen unbelievably quickly because a lot of people will start to go, take me going up for Christmas this year up north. I don't want to drive to Manchester. I don't want to drive to Leeds. I'd love to sit in the car and play on my phone and just doom scroll on Instagram. That's what I want to do. I don't want to drive 6 hours. I don't want to drive on Christmas Eve. All these things, right? You get into this world. I think the change will happen. This change, you're right. There's a huge legacy backlog of loads of vehicles, but I think this will be one of those things that's led by consumers. It'll be I think that transition will be much faster than people anticipate because it's a bit like that first time the iPhone came out. It's so noticeably better instantly that people will make that shift. I think people will jump and go, wow, that's what I want. I don't want to drive anywhere ever again. I want to sit in the back seat and chill out. I'm not saying they'll be sat there drinking Bollinger, right? But they're certainly going to be there going, I'm happy to sit and watch YouTube videos in the back of this thing, and I'm never going to think about driving anywhere again. So my gut feel is it will happen fast. Sure, mate.
I'm 100% with this. So like the majority of the driving we do currently is Sundays. I have to drive one of my daughters to rugby. And right now there's loads of minis festivals. So every Sunday morning I have to go to a rugby tournament somewhere. So this Sunday I have to go to Ealing Trailfinders at 7:30 in the morning. I don't want to drive. I don't want to drive on any of the Sundays. It's really, really annoying. And it's so early in the morning. And, I kind of have to be a little bit more controlled on Saturday because I know that I'm driving at 7:30 in the morning on Sunday. This is alcohol wise, by the way. So like if this exists in London, I'm taking that every single Sunday. And in fact, probably every single drive I did in London would be that rather than like public transport. And that's 80 to 90% of the driving we do. And that's, yeah, I completely would jump
But
on
doesn't that exist already, Dutz, with Uber? Can you would you say whether there's a driver there or not, like the facility is available to you to always just have that lift for a few quid?
Yeah, but it's way more expensive. This is my understanding of it. So like getting an Uber to Ealing would cost me 40 quid tomorrow on Sunday morning. I think and again, this is my understanding. I don't know if this will be exactly what happens. As far as I'm aware, it's like half the price, if not, yeah, it's there or thereabouts. So for 20 quid, if we're just like, we just won't use the car at all, we'll just use this, then I'm doing it.
Yeah, good.
Makes
All
sense.
right.
All right.
Shall we move on?
Let's move on.
Yeah.
To my favorite.
Right then.
Absolutely my favorite section.
Oh, this is my favorite as well. I'm all over this shit.
Mainly because it requires no preparation. So
No preparation at all. Preparation on my part.
I mean,
but no
loads
preparation.
for me.
So obviously we had a true one last time. So I'm going to do a false one this time, right?
Sorry.
Or am I going to switcheroo it and do a true one this time because you thought I'd do a false one? Okay, it's Conspiracy Corner. And we are going to be talking about Arctic frost. Remember, if you've heard of it, you go last, okay? So Arctic frost was supposedly a covert joint operation between the US and Canadian governments that ran from 2008 to 2016. Officially, it never existed. Unofficially, it's one of those things that the more you look at it, the stranger it gets. The truth was exposed from leaked emails from a Canadian climate research station in Nunavut. The leaked files referred repeatedly to something called AF7, or Project Arctic Frost. The project's goal was testing large-scale climate manipulation technology under the cover of polar research. Here's where it gets interesting. Around that time, there were reports from Inuit communities saying that for the first time in living memory, they were hearing thunder in winter and seeing ice patterns and cloud movement that nobody could explain. Local hunters claimed planes were flying grid patterns over the pack ice at night, no markings, no lines, but chemtrails in the sky, followed by sudden sharp drops in temperature over the next 24 hours. The leaked emails suggested that the flights were part of a test to seed the upper atmosphere with reflective particulates, microscopic metallic dust designed to bounce solar radiation back into space. The idea was to create a kind of artificial polar vortex as a proof of concept for emergency climate control. And if you look at satellite temperature data, there were unusual cold weather anomalies in that period, intense, short-lived freezes that didn't match normal climate patterns. Not big enough to hit worldwide news, but big enough that the scientists logged them as unexplained deviations. But Arctic frost was a rehearsal, not to fix climate change, but to find out if countries could weaponize weather. If you can generate extreme cold or extreme storms in a controlled area, you can, in theory, cripple infrastructure, supply chains, or energy systems without firing a single bullet. Now, the whole thing was shut down in 2016 when one of the tests overshot its forecast radius, freezing a shipping channel and costing millions in damage. No one ever admitted fault. The story disappeared, the files vanished, the researchers changed departments or retired very quietly. And here's the funny thing. If you ask the Canadian government about Project Arctic Frost, they say absolutely nothing, just we have no record of that program, which is what they always say. What do you think?
Love it.
Right. I'm going to go first. I think it's bollocks. It's false. I'm going to be bold, straight in. Because you use the word
Why do you think it's bollocks?
chemtrail.
Which part don't you think is
chemtrails.
Chemtrails.
believable?
Right. I'm going to, obviously, I'm not immersed in this world, and you are deep in Conspiracy Corner, right? The chemtrails thing, I only know a little bit about it, which is someone's doing something bad with trails in the air that come from normal airplanes, which my understanding is it's just like airplanes flying. They're not punting stuff out into the sky, but people appear, is this right? Chemtrails are something to do with people appear to think that these things that are trailing off airplanes, which are obviously, I don't know what it is. I'm not an engineer in any way, shape or form here. They're not punting stuff out into the sky. So the moment you said that, you lost me. I was like, no, everything to do with chemtrails is clearly bollocks. I've got no proof. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a climate scientist, but I'm calling it hard on just that one word, because in my understanding is that is just nonsense.
Well, let me give you an example of the use of chucking chemicals out into the sky. Do you remember when the FA Cup happened in Qatar and they cloud seeded?
Oh, the World Cup.
Sorry, World Cup.
Yeah.
It was in Qatar, right?
Yeah.
And
Cloud
they
seed.
seeded clouds using, I think, silver iodide or something
Yes.
like that, right? And they chucked it out into the atmosphere from planes to make clouds happen so that there would be more shade and the football tournament would be less hot.
So
Do you remember that?
I do remember that. And I'm also aware of weather manipulation, but it's the word, the chemtrails word is the word that made me think no. There's something about, I feel like every so often I've read something about chemtrails, and every time I've read it, I've gone, no, this must
what
just be
is-
bollocks. It must be
What
bollocks.
is cloud seeding if it's not chemtrails?
I think if you were dumping stuff out of a plane, it would come out of the belly of it rather than at the end, the tips of the wings. That's my gut.
I feel a little bit like you haven't seen crop dusting.
You're right. I am. Let's be fair. I am not familiar with all of the different methods of dispersing all kinds of different things. Of dispersing. That's not a word. Distributing things out.
No,
there.
dispersing is a word.
I don't think I said dispersing. I think I just made a word up. Distributing or something. Distributing. Maybe there are different ways of doing that. I get that they've tried manipulating weather patterns, but it was more, it's the chemtrail that felt conspiracy to me. So
I feel like
that's
you've
me.
jumped on this chemtrail thing.
Yeah, I
know.
feel like that was a red flag. That was a red flag for me. Whereas the idea of weather manipulation, I'm open to that being a thing that governments would do, and open to the idea of weaponizing it. Sure, I feel like those planes would be shot down though. So,
Duts, what do you think?
Plane.
Also bullshit, but not because of a spurious word that you've used. I don't think that. So if it was the Canadian and the US government, they've started doing this thing. They've accidentally frozen whatever. So they proved that it worked. Why would you then shut it down? Like, you'd just be like, fuck me, guys. We've actually made this work. Let's go to town with it.
Perhaps they realized it was just too dangerous.
No. The US government realized it was just too dangerous, so they stopped.
Didn't work that well with nuclear weapons, did it? Maybe we should make some more of them.
Yeah, they've done some pretty wild stuff in the past. Yeah. All right, AJ, what do you reckon?
I totally buy the weather research stuff. They actually did it in 2008 in Beijing for different reasons for the Olympics, with the iodide to make it rain so that it didn't rain on Beijing. They made it rain earlier. That's been around, that's proven. And I know that it is a theory that one way to combat climate change is to put reflective stuff in the atmosphere at the poles to reflect the light back. I think a combination of things. I think, yeah, I'm with. I don't think they would stop doing it if it was proven it had worked. I also question whether the US would buddy up with Canada to do this. There doesn't seem to be any particular need to do that. And Canadians are nice people, right? There's no.
Canadians, remember, they're much closer to the territory where this happened.
America's got Alaska. It could have done this. We could have done this anywhere, right? I think stuff went on, and I can see why it's. Oh, I'm just sort of talking myself into it. Yeah, fine. It's true.
All right, we've got two falses and a true.
Yep, for entertainment purposes, I will say it's true.
I think it's good that we've got a true, because if you're right, AJ, you walk away a hero.
But you know what? That did make me think a little bit. I kind of agree with you, John, on Canada's got a much better surface area to do this kind of thing over, right? You wouldn't do it in Alaska. Alaska weirdly has got quite a lot of people in it compared to large bits of Canada. So if you were going to do it anyway, you probably would do it in Canada. If you're going to do this, you do it there. You wouldn't do it over Alaska. It's too close to Russia. You don't want to risk that, right? Nothing happens in Greenland. The Danes aren't bothered about this stuff. I think I'm probably more skeptical, without wanting to offend an entire nation, of like what Canada did in this. They probably went, yeah, sure, whatever. So, not even sure they got planes capable of doing this kind of thing. So,
all right. I'm going to give you an opportunity to switch.
I'll go with Oh God, I don't want to say true. Oh,
Well, I mean, if you're not going to say true, then you're not switching.
well, I feel like now
There is-
I've
there's
tipped
no-
myself
there's
back
no in
onto the
between
middle
of false
ground.
and true.
I got excited by the word chemtrails and immediately went bollocks. But now the idea that if you're going to do it anyway, you would do it in Canada. Back then, Canada did whatever Americans told them to do. Probably didn't care that much. We're probably just interested
10
in not
years
paying
ago.
for it and just seeing what the results were. So, do I believe in chemtrails or the incompetence of the Canadian government? Really, that's what we're discussing here.
So you're trying to blame Canada?
Always blame Canada. No,
There's a song about that.
Might be
Yeah,
a song
I
about
know.
that.
All right, I'm going to put you
still
out. I'm
going
going to put you
false,
out of
though.
your misery.
I'm going to go false though.
Okay, 2 falses and a true. It is utter bollocks. It's all made up. But one thing is true, and that is the Project Arctic Frost or Arctic Frost investigation is the code name for a major federal investigation in the United States launched in 2022 into alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 US presidential election, specifically the so-called false electors scheme. It issued nearly 200 subpoenas, targeted more than 400 individuals and organizations, and included obtaining call metadata records from sitting members of Congress under sealed orders. It's a serious thing. It's ongoing, or at least recently active. It's politically explosive, and very much not about freezing the tundra with secret chemtrails.
Very good, Jonathan. Enjoyed that.
I love the fact that you got that just based upon your hatred of the word chemtrails.
I agree. It's a red flag.
It's a
red
chemtrails
flag.
is a red. It felt red flaggy immediately. Well,
That's what Conspiracy Corner is all about. The red flags.
But that was excellent. That felt, I felt like I nearly talked myself around into believing in the Canadian government was leading things over their entire nation. No, we should have had the mountain man himself, Nick Croncon, for that. I felt like he would have had a strong opinion from Vancouver. We're going to move on to our next section, predictions. So we did our first prediction last couple of weeks, and the winner is not here. We asked everyone to predict the auction selling price of a Gordon Murray automobile, and the winner was Simon Dedman. He guessed 18.5 million auction price. The correct number was 20.63 million, which was excellent. Not going to lie, I was last by some margin. I thought it would go for over 50 million US dollars. So not a great start to my own section I came up with to suggest I'm good at predicting things. So
You nearly convinced me it would be 50 million, though.
I convinced myself it would be 50 million. I was so disappointed when I saw it was 20. So we're going to move on to a slightly different prediction section here. What we've decided to do is we do 2 predictions. A short-term prediction that you can get the answer, we'll get the answer to before the next podcast, and a longer-term prediction, right, that we'll only find out later. Okay? So the first short-term prediction, and we don't need to spend lots of time on this, which is the 2025 F1 season concludes on the 7th of December in Abu Dhabi. Which driver is going to win the title? Now, very, very, very quickly, I'm going to pop this up.
I'm a bit disappointed you said we're not going to spend very much time on this, because this is the one thing that I'm mildly knowledgeable about.
Oh, we can spend as much time on it as you like. So this is the current driver table. There's 2 races to go. Now, if you know anything about F1, and frankly, I don't know as much as you, Shamit, it's got a bit complicated now. There's all kinds of different ways to score points. So there's a maximum of 58 points available from the 2 rounds, okay? All right. Now, I understand that Norris, particularly, he can't win the title, okay, in the Qatar Sprint this Saturday, so happening tomorrow, right? But he'll be world champion if he's at least 26 points ahead of Piastri and Verstappen after Sunday's race, which takes place at 4 p.m., okay? So as long as he outscores his title rivals by 2 points, over the weekend, he'll become champion, okay? So to stay in the fight, both drivers must be no more than 25 points behind Norris if he doesn't win it to stay in it. So, Shamit, we'll go straight to you. What do you think?
Okay, so I want to start with, I spoke to someone, so I've got a friend who works at McLaren, and I spoke to him 4 weeks ago and asked him this very same question. And do you know what his answer was? I said, who do you think is going to win the world title? He turned around to me and said, Verstappen. I was like, I'm not going to say his name specifically because of that. My heart and my hopes are with Norris. So Lando Norris has had a absolutely killer season. In my eyes, he's the best driver on the track at the moment. Piastri kicked off the season quite well. So a lot of stuff's happened that isn't his fault. So there was a crash in one race, which was 100% his fault. It was a rush of blood to the head. Didn't finish. I think it was, what was it? He had an oil failure in the Netherlands. So again, did not finish. If he had finished, he would have been the world champion after the Las Vegas Grand Prix.
Yeah,
And hilariously, that would have then been stripped from him because once again, McLaren fucked up, and because of what is it? I forgot what it is. But anyway, so another did not finish. So he's had 3 this season. So that's 75 points that have gone out the window. There's 2 races left, like you said. Sprint qualifying happened this afternoon. Piastri's first, Russell's second, Norris's third, Verstappen's in 6th. I don't know. In a sprint, it's very hard for Verstappen to get up in the points. So I think Norris hopefully will finish in points. As you said earlier, 58 points. So if you win the sprint, you get 8, 7, 6, and it goes down like that. All he needs to do is podium for the next 2 races. He deserves to win it. I'll be so gutted if he doesn't. If Norris doesn't win it, I'll be so gutted. Piastri, his car today was looking very good, like really good, and that's why he came in first. Norris had a little bit of a twitch. The Red Bull is not looking great on the track. So hopefully it'll be done and dusted this weekend. But yeah, 100% for me, Norris deserves to win. He should win. I don't want to see Verstappen winning another world championship. Don't want to see it happen.
So we got one Lando Norris. AJ?
I am the diametric opposite to Shamit on this subject. I know 0 about Formula One. I came away incredibly confused by sprint races. I wasn't even aware of their existence before. I will say Lando Norris because he is in the box seat. He's got put in cricketing terms, he's got the runs on the board. And the only concern would be if the him and Piastri DNFing in Las Vegas was a bit of a wobble. But I would also like him to win it. But I have no investment in that.
The one thing sorry, I'm just gonna keep going on this. The one thing I'd like to see is McLaren to get some balls in the next race and say, actually, you can't race each other. You guys can't race each other. You can't put yourselves in a position where you can crash into each other, because it's happened, I'd say, like 5 times this season. Once it's ended in Lando not finishing. Once I think it's ended in Piastri not finishing. They need to stop it. It's 2 races out. They could not win the Drivers' Championships because of it. They need to just say, team orders, you don't fucking race. You're not racing each other.
Papaya rules are back then, Shomit.
Yeah.
Okay. We got 2 Norrises. John?
Yes, Norris, isn't it? Actually, I haven't been watching the F1. I mean, for probably 10 years, honestly. I like the idea.
I like the way you
of it.
said that really quietly, John. Probably 10
Well,
years.
because I feel a bit embarrassed about it. Because, in order to be a top draw car enthusiast, you should be watching the sport. But I actually don't watch any sport ever on telly. So I
Despite your
the only
entire
sport-
job being designing sport things.
yeah, I know.
Did you at least watch the Ryder Cup?
Yeah, I mean, I follow the golf, and we have the golf on in the office, so that's fine, right? That's done. but I actually just don't particularly enjoy watching sport. I don't have the brain for it. You know, my brain is much more sort of image-based, pictorial, rather than following the stats of a particular driver. So consequently, I had to look up the odds. So I looked up the odds. I looked at Ladbrokes. And I misread the question in the first instance, and I thought, okay, well, are we talking about drivers or constructors championship?
Instructors and stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's done. It's done so much that Ladbrokes have their odds on constructor championship without McLaren. They've just taken them out. It's done.
Well,
So
no, they've already won.
They've won it.
They won.
no,
Like,
I know
won,
that they've already.
no.
I know, but it's like I've not seen that before in odds. It's like that's done. We'll talk about the other people. So that's quite cool. I'm not a big betting person either. Anyway, so obviously that's not part of the question. But I mean, Lando Norris, the odds on Lando Norris winning a 3 to 10 versus Verstappen at 5 to 2 and Piastri at 18 to 1. So, I mean, not knowing much more about it, it's Norris, isn't it? And great to have a Brit up there doing his thing.
But also a lovely Brit. Like
Yeah.
he's a nice guy. I like him a lot.
So we
He
got
speaks very highly of you.
I know. We're really close. We went on a walk during lockdown. I'll get into that later.
That's that guy. Sam, what do you think? You set
I
the
want-
question. What's your thoughts?
I absolutely want Verstappen to destroy Norris. That's what I want, right? Because I once met Lando Norris's dad. And
Hargreaves Lansdowne guy.
I met him at a industry event, and I asked him if he was interested in investing in my startup, and he very categorically said no. Give him some credit. In hindsight, it was a pretty good decision, but he wasn't particularly nice about it. And one thing I find interesting is, so I obviously have not teenage boy, one teenage boy, and an about to turn 11-year-old boy. And in the first instance in our house, in any sport, they support different teams. Jake is Team Papaya, to the point where we've actually had to have a serious chat with him that he has to stop wearing orange clothing, because there are many instances in the world where that's not appropriate. So whereas my older, ruthless son has become the greatest Verstappen fan in the history of the world. And he makes me watch all kinds of things about Verstappen. We've plowed our way through the F1 documentary on Netflix, Drive Survive. And so two things I think are really interesting. So one, Adam Norris wasn't very nice to me. Two, I watched this documentary he did with Chris Harris. And interestingly, I've hated Verstappen with a passion since he sort of humiliated Hamilton in that very controversial end of F1 season, which is when I really started watching it again. Really annoyed me. But the documentary with Chris Harris, I actually watched, and I thought I saw a really different side to him that I'd never really appreciated, I think. And I found
you talking about the film with the Mustang GTD?
Yeah. I just saw a side of him I'd never really contemplated, and it made me really relook at him. And I just think he's just if you actually take out all the hatred from it, he's such a phenomenal driver. But I love this idea. Like, he's had such a bad season. The idea that he could come back and win this at the end, right, is so incredible that I've just got back him as the underdog, right? And that last race, I watched the whole thing. Just the most incredible, last sort of 3 races I've watched him in. Some of those drives have just been unreal. Just absolutely bonkers made up, He's chasing people down on crap tires, He's all over the place, but somehow he's still causing absolute chaos. He's going up the entire grid. I would love to see him come in the same way that he kind of overcame Hamilton and it wasn't really fair. I would love the idea that this time he did it, and he just did it off his own back, right? Nothing goes wrong. He just beats them. So my younger son, if he ever listens to that, his back will be gutted. But yeah, I'm with my oldest son. Team Verstappen all the way. I want him to destroy them.
I've got 3 things to say. One, I came very close to using a word that we're not allowed to use on this podcast when you said Verstappen. 2, If you've got a problem with Lando Norris's dad, I imagine if you met Max Verstappen's dad, you'd have an even bigger problem. 3, I completely get what you're saying about his driving. Like, I'm not saying Max Verstappen's a horrible person or a bad driver. He's had a run, right? And we've got these new kids who are a bit younger, who are like kind of in the mix. Lando Norris hasn't had an easy season. Far from it. Like, he was way behind Piastri in the first half of the season, and he's battled to get back to where he is, right? And he's battled to overtake him. Like, if you asked anyone in the first half of the season, is Piastri's fucking it's his year. So I just love Norris. Sorry, that's it. I'm done.
So what have we got then? We've got 3 Norrises and a Verstappen.
And a Verstappen. And I tell you what we'll do. We'll park the football one, interest of time. We'll come back to that, right? Because we've still got time. We'll do that in the Christmas special. Okay?
Yeah, and also I don't know a lot about football, so I had to do lots of very basic research.
That's okay. We'll park that. We'll move on to our final section, which John's going to introduce.
All right. Well, it's the music section, isn't it? Which we love because it can be short and sweet, and it brings us home. The question is, what is one song we think AI could never write? We're seeing a lot of AI music at the moment, particularly the sort of, turning a rap song into 50s or 30s soul or something like that. And I've seen the other day Oasis in reggae style, which is pretty cool. But the question is, one song we think AI could never write, and I think we have to consider that as not right now. I think we have to think about it from when the song was written, right? So if we put AI at the point in time where that song was written, could it have done it? So the question is, to you guys, what could AI not have written? AJ, you go first.
I came with this thinking about what does AI do and how does it work? It looks for patterns. The way the large language models work is they are essentially probability machines, and they work out what the likeliest thing to happen next is. And I thought, music, 8 notes, obviously different instruments, but probably relatively predictable. So I thought, to my mind, that AI would struggle most with the lyrics. And then I thought about whose lyrics are most esoteric, whose lyrics perhaps are hardest to predict. And then I started thinking about rhymes and how that will work too. And then I started thinking, who has the most interesting rhymes? And I landed on Bob Dylan. I thought about Like a Rolling Stone. I thought about Hurricane. AI would never write Hurricane because it has the N word in it. But in the end, I went for something that John will know is one of my favourite songs of all time, Tangled Up in Blue. Mainly because of one stanza where I don't think AI would ever come up with this rhyming structure. Now, I'm very aware that I need to be careful not to sing this in the tune because suddenly we became PRS liable. So I'm going to just read the lyrics with slight hints of what it might be, if that makes sense. So it says, I muttered something under my breath. She studied the lines on my face. I must admit, I felt a little uneasy when she bent down to tie the laces of my shoe, tangled up in blue. And I think it's that rhyming of the first part of laces to study the lines of my face. I don't think AI would ever do that. And that is why I'm putting Tangled Up in Blue in the vault.
What an amazing tune. AJ, I remember very well that
we listened to it in the dark, Hunty, didn't we?
Singing that, trying to sing it after 11 beers, getting through all the lyrics there. Absolutely incredible song. And I agree. I don't think AI wouldn't have done that bit. But given enough Bob Dylan songs, I'm sure it could reproduce another Bob Dylan song. But at the time he wrote that, there wouldn't have been that much precedent. So it wouldn't have been possible. Duts, what do you reckon?
So I have got, so this is a little bit of a tangent. So as I mentioned last week, I'm not working at the moment. So there's a new season of Stranger Things coming out, or come out, sorry, on Thursday. So as a little treat to myself, I've been rewatching the past 4 seasons. And they've ramped up. They've really ramped up in like how good they are, having rewatched it. And like season 4 is very much Kate Bush territory. So running up that hill is on it constantly. So the one like stanza, if you will, from it is there's so much hate for the ones we love. Yeah, oh. And the reason I picked that is because it's a very like the reason behind the song is so bizarre. Not bizarre, it's a bit of a weird construct. So I don't know if any of you have ever thought about what the song's about. But essentially it's about a couple that don't 100% see eye to eye. Their relationship is a little bit fraught. And the context of the song is, if I could make a deal with God and swap places, then we'd understand how each other feels, which I think is lovely. But also, I don't think AI could really figure that out, or at least I doubt it. And it's it's about the struggles of a relationship, an uphill battle, life itself, all of that, all contextualized in a great song that was brought back into the limelight by Stranger Things.
Hats off. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's nice that the answer to these are also really good songs that we like. Maybe it's a coincidence. Sam, what do you reckon?
So I tried to think of, and this might sound unusual, I was trying to think of songs, and I think when you wrote this, you said, a song that we think AI could never write, something with emotion, story, or raw imperfection. And I tried to try and think about what songs I sometimes think this is the context they came from, but maybe over time that context changed in a very human way. And I'll tell you a little story. I've not scripted it to the same degree that Shamit did, I would say, but I'll tell you a little story about.
I don't think anyone has ever.
I still enjoyed it, mate. I think we'll have one of those a week. But I went to a funeral of a really good family friend. And if Tristan and Marissa ever listen to this, hopefully they'll enjoy the story. But so my dad's best friend is a guy called John Mackey, and brilliantly, his parents, they had a sister who they called Jackie Mackey, and they never saw an issue with this, but it was like just a ridiculous name, right? Jackie Mackey. Like, come on, you can really think a bit harder about this. And Jackie was just this absolute brilliant, like the most fun. I mean, she wasn't related to me in any way, but she was always around at everything we did because my parents and the Mackeys were really, really close. So she was always just there. And when she died, I went to her funeral, and we had this kind of, I hadn't seen a lot of the people there. And I remember Tom and I went to the funeral together, and like everyone was there, but he and I turned up, and we weren't late, but we weren't early. And we were kind of sat at the back, and we were chatting to people. And then there were a lot of people there, hundreds of people there. She was incredibly well loved. And then they played a song to carry her in to, and they played a song I would never have thought about in that context at a funeral. And I think at that point I hadn't really been to that many funerals. And they played Yazoo, Only You. And I remember thinking the moment like those synths started, like this was like a really weird song to play at a funeral, right? But then the more I thought about it, it just felt unbelievably appropriate that actually a song about kind of something else kind of really worked in that context as well. And it was, it's an unusual song in itself. obviously Yazoo didn't really last. It was, someone coming out of Depeche Mode. There wasn't much tenure. I'm trying to remember the chap's name, but he went on to like Erasure. She went on her
Andy Bell.
went on her own sort of solo career. There wasn't much Yazoo. Only a couple of really, really sort of banging songs. But I just thought it was really interesting because that line was, all I needed was the love you gave, all I needed for another day, and all I never knew, only you. And I remember thinking, I can't imagine AI could write a song that could be used in multiple contexts in a way that it would never have anticipated going, yeah, that's a great song for a funeral. And I remember thinking as we walked in, going, they couldn't have picked a better choice that somehow, in a way, represented her. And it was, in a lot of ways, it's quite a fun, like upbeat. In some ways, it's quite a fun, upbeat song. But in another way, it was incredibly emotional thing to have. And weirdly, I hadn't really been that upset that she died. I was very sad, but I hadn't really felt it. And the moment they played that, completely tipped me over the edge, kind of thing. And I was like, wow, actually, yeah, you sort of realize how that person's had an impact on your life. And it made me think, I wonder if AI could ever do that, like treat different songs in different contexts and actually think of them in different ways. Or would it always be, so this is what I've been asked to do and I'm going to make something like this? It could never think about different contexts that different things would be played in. So yeah, so I went with Yazoo, Only You.
Stick it on the playlist.
Also, though saying that, the only thing I did come back with was, if you listen to the opening synths, that does feel quite computer and AI. So maybe that's a bad choice. Only realised that at the end.
But I do love the point you make there about like music and emotion. Like, I'm the worst at crying at films, but it's never what's happening in the film. It's the music that they happen to put with a specific incident. And it's, like music can literally break you.
But if you listen to some of the 50s versions of songs that are around now, they are full of emotion and soul, and you would imagine that they've been written by, somebody going through some kind of struggle somewhere. They're really, really good. But that was my point earlier about, you have to consider what AI knows at the time. Because if you were to say right now, if you get AI to make a song, well, it will be able to make anything. Honestly, it would be able to put the emotion in that. What did I say on the question? It was emotion, story, raw imperfection. I think it could do it. I think it could do all of these. And we do a few sort of fake AI songs to go with video renders that we do of our projects. And they're amazing. They tell the story. They do it so well, all the different instruments and rhythms and chords. And it's fantastic. But if you were to I'll come back to you, Dutz. If you were to do it at the time, what I was looking for was the pioneers, right? The people who changed the game. So I got a few different things, but I'll finish with one which I think is absolutely fitting that bill. But the first one I thought of was Run DMC and Aerosmith with Walk This Way. It was the first time that anyone ever rapped in a rock song or rocked in a rap song, whatever you want to say. It was an incredible crossover of rap and rock. And so I figured at the time, probably that's never been done before in that way. And then obviously being a Bristol boy, Dutz, you'll appreciate this. Also being from Bristol, the trip hop movement when we were at school was pretty massive. What Massive Attack and Portishead. So I thought Unfinished Sympathy from Massive Attack was a pretty amazing sort of very original, change the game kind of song. And then along the lines of what AJ was saying, I thought about Nirvana, and Nirvana were totally different to everybody else. I've just picked up some lyrics just now, which like, how could AI ever write? How about this? Chew your meat for you, pass it back and forth. I travel through a tube and end up in your infection. What? I mean, in a way, maybe it's perfect for AI, but AI being full of reason and logic, I don't think it quite gets there. Anyway, but the one artist who I thought really changed the game in our lifetime was Mike Skinner, The Streets, and the entirety of the original Pirate Material album. And just because it's sort of a title track, Has It Come to This is my submission for the playlist this week.
Good album,
that's
good
awesome.
song. Very good.
But wait, but surely, did you start asking for a minute to buy chips and drinks?
That was
There we
album
go.
2.
How could that ever be written by a computer? They would never understand the genius of it.
They wouldn't know
That
it,
was from a
John.
Grand Don't Come for 3, Shomit.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. You are. But I still
Yeah.
wanted to get it in. I wanted to shoehorn it in no matter what.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Well, how about this? Just to finish out, weigh up Henry with precision, few herbs and a bit of Benson. Right? You could get that from AI probably, but don't forget the Rizzler, lean like the Tower of Pisa. What has the Tower of Pisa got to do with any of that? AI is never going to get it. It's not going to do it. That's the one.
I
I
think
love it.
that's excellent, mate. I think it's a brilliant note to finish on. So we're going to come back in a couple of weeks. We're going to do a Christmas special. In the context that we have absolutely no idea what we're doing, we have no idea what a Christmas special means, bearing in mind this will be our third go at this. So we're going to come up with some bollocks for our Christmas special. Hopefully we'll come up with some good bollocks. But at the moment, the bollocks is unknown. AJ?
Can I make a prediction for the Christmas special?
You can make a prediction for the Christmas special.
Whatever the music round is, Shomit will choose Christmas Wrapping by the Waitresses.
Yeah, fuck you. He's nailed it immediately.
We can all look forward to that. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.